Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here today. We're going to dive into an exciting and important topic: foundations and perspectives in criminology. Throughout this presentation, we'll explore crime, criminal behavior, and the criminal justice system from various angles: legal, political, sociological, and psychological. This multifaceted approach will help us better understand the complexities involved in criminology and the factors that influence how crime is understood and addressed. Let's get started. Criminology is essentially the scientific study of crime, criminals, and the entire criminal justice system. It's not just about looking at crimes after they happen, but trying to understand the underlying reasons behind them. One of the main purposes of criminology is to explore why crimes occur, who is more likely to commit them, and how societies react through laws, policing, and social policies. What's really interesting is that criminology isn't limited to just one field. It draws from sociology, psychology, law, and political science. This interdisciplinary approach helps us get a fuller picture of criminal behavior and the ways society tries to maintain control and order. When we talk about crime, it's important to understand that there are several ways to look at it. First, from the legalistic perspective, crime is defined simply as a violation of criminal laws. If someone breaks the law, they've committed a crime. But it doesn't end there. The political perspective digs deeper, focusing on power and interest behind these laws, pointing out that what gets defined as a crime often reflects who holds power in society. Then, we have the sociological perspective, which highlights the role of social structures, culture, and inequalities in shaping criminal behavior. This view helps us see how factors like poverty or discrimination influence crime rates. Finally, the psychological perspective zeroes in on the individual, studying mental processes and behaviors to understand why a person might commit a crime. Each of these perspectives gives us a different but valuable lens to understand the complex nature of crime. From a legalistic perspective, crime is defined as behavior that violates the criminal laws established by legitimate authorities like state, federal, or local governments. This perspective depends heavily on formal legal codes to determine what counts as a crime, focusing on written statutes and the power of the government to enforce these laws. It's important to understand that this viewpoint forms the backbone of our criminal justice system, as it sets clear boundaries about what is unacceptable and prescribes specific sanctions for those who break these laws. Essentially, it creates a structured framework that guides law enforcement, courts, and corrections in handling criminal behavior. When we talk about crime from a legal perspective, it's important to understand that crime refers to any human behavior that breaks the criminal laws established by a state, the federal government, or a local authority. These laws are created and enforced by those who have the official power to make and implement them. What's key here is that this definition is based on formal legal codes, not just on what might be considered morally wrong or socially unacceptable. This legal framework helps create a consistent way to categorize crimes and carry out enforcement, ensuring that everyone is judged by the same standards. The legalistic perspective is clear and systematic, but it does have some important limitations. First, not every harmful or socially wrong act is actually defined as a crime by law. That means some actions we might consider wrong don't always get labeled criminal. Second, laws themselves can sometimes reflect social biases or serve political interests, which can lead to the exclusion or unfair treatment of marginalized groups. Third, legal statutes are not always complete or consistent, and they can change over time, which affects how crimes are defined and enforced. Finally, this perspective tends to focus narrowly on the law and may overlook the broader social contexts and deeper causes behind criminal behavior. Understanding these limitations helps us see why a purely legalistic view doesn't capture the full complexity of crime. When we look at crime through a political lens, the focus shifts to power and authority within society. Crime isn't just about breaking rules, it's about who has the power to create and enforce those rules. Laws, in this view, often serve to protect the interests of those in control, shaping what is labeled as criminal behavior. This perspective also draws attention to the conflicts between different social groups, showing how the definition of crime can be used strategically to control or marginalize certain populations, reinforcing existing power structures. Understanding this helps us see crime not just as individual acts, but as part of larger social and political dynamics. When we look at crime from a sociological perspective, we see that it's deeply influenced by the social structures around us, as well as cultural norms and inequalities. Crime isn't just about individual choices, it's shaped by the environment people live in. This approach also highlights how different factors like poverty, education levels, the community someone grows up in, and the way they're socialized all play a role in determining what behaviors are labeled as criminal. Essentially, crime is seen as a social phenomenon tied to how groups interact and how society is organized, rather than just isolated acts by individuals. This broader view helps us understand the underlying social reasons behind crime. When we look at crime from a psychological perspective, the main focus is on understanding individual behavior, mental health, and personality traits to figure out what drives someone to commit a crime. This approach dives into areas like mental disorders, how people develop cognitively, how they manage their emotions, and the motivations that might lead them to offend. Ultimately, the goal here is to explain why certain individuals engage in criminal behavior by examining these psychological factors. This helps us get a deeper insight into the personal and mental processes behind crime. When we compare different perspectives, understanding why definitions matter becomes really clear. First, looking at legalistic versus political definitions. Legalistic definitions are crucial because they shape how laws are made and enforced. They provide a formal and structured way to approach issues. On the other hand, political definitions shed light on the power dynamics behind these laws and policies, revealing who benefits and who might be disadvantaged. Then, if we consider sociological versus psychological approaches, sociological perspectives help us see the bigger picture. They focus on social causes and emphasize prevention strategies, aiming to address root issues in society. Meanwhile, psychological approaches dive into the individual level, offering valuable insights for rehabilitation and treatment, which are essential for helping people recover and reintegrate. Together, these perspectives give us a more complete understanding of complex issues. So, criminology is essentially the study of crime, but it's much more than just looking at illegal acts. We examine crime from several angles: legal, political, sociological, and psychological, to get a full picture. This means we're not just focusing on the act itself, but also on the people involved, the social context, and the systems in place. Criminology aims to give us a thorough understanding of why crimes happen, how society reacts to them, and how criminal justice systems function. One of the key strengths of criminology is its multidisciplinary approach, combining insights from different fields to capture the complexity of crime. This holistic perspective is crucial because it helps us develop more effective policies and interventions to address crime in real life. When we talk about crime definitions in criminology, their importance can't be overstated. First, clear definitions are crucial for reliable research and accurate data collection. Without a shared understanding of what constitutes a crime, studies can become inconsistent and unreliable. Next, these definitions are the foundation for creating fair and effective laws. If laws aren't based on precise definitions, they risk being vague or unjust. Furthermore, consistent enforcement and adjudication depend on these clear definitions. Law enforcement and courts need them to apply the law uniformly and fairly. Additionally, crime definitions play a vital role in policy formulation. They help policymakers address the root causes of crime and design measures to protect society effectively. Lastly, accurate crime definitions strike a balance between maintaining social order, delivering justice, and safeguarding individual rights throughout the criminal justice process. This balance is essential for a system that is both just and respectful of human dignity. Looking ahead in criminology, we'll explore several important areas to deepen our understanding. First, we'll look at criminological research methods, which provide systematic ways to study crime and gather reliable data. Then, we'll examine various theories that explain why people commit crimes, helping us understand the motivations behind criminal behavior. We'll also discuss the key roles that police, courts, and correctional institutions play within the justice system. Finally, we'll address contemporary issues and reforms, focusing on how crime control and prevention strategies are evolving to meet today's challenges. Each of these topics will give us a more comprehensive view of the field and how it adapts over time.